finally, you give it a little while, and in 2364, there's enough divergence, and the people of Mars have started to feel like they are a separate entity so much that they finally decide to declare independence from Earth. They nationalize all the Earth corporations that have different businesses on Mars, take them over, and basically say, we are independent. And they rename Mars, and actually rename themselves, because the name of the planet and the name of the people there wind up becoming the same word. They rename themselves Gongen, G-O-N-G-E-N, Gongen, which means mountain deity, because they're naming themselves after Olympus Mons, that large volcano, on Mars. Of course, Earth doesn't take too kindly to this, but they try not to have open warfare to begin with. And for about 24 years, you get what amounts to a Cold War. Minor skirmishes here and there, sort of police actions, you might say, maybe some proxy conflicts where the Mavericks are wind up caught in the middle. But after 24 years of a Cold War, things start to get hot, and you get what is known as the Battle of Phobos, where the Earthers go up against the Gongen, which they still think of as Martians, basically, and the Mavericks are caught in the middle. In fact, the Mavericks have been sort of instigating there in the middle, and there's this huge battle called the Battle of Phobos, which ratchets up the tensions and introduces a new element of Gongen culture, these huge so-called nobots, which we'll be dealing with more in terms of their introduction throughout things like the novella series. It's a very interesting dynamic, a very technologically advanced culture on both sides with very different ways of life. If you are on Gongen, it's not the corporation that you wind up being beholden to or connected to. It's which nobot or the spirits behind the nobots that you happen to be most adhered to in terms of your job, your lifestyle. But neither side comes out a clear victor in the sense that either one could claim dominance over the solar system. There are still huge tensions between Gongen and Earth and the Mavericks, who are now slowly pulling together and becoming a major force to be reckoned with in their own right. As if that wasn't trouble enough, there's another story brewing in another part of the universe. Thousands, perhaps tens of thousands of years ago, an aquatic species winds up evolving to one of, if not the highest forms of life in the entire universe. They are known as the Shi on the planet Sial. And the Shi reach the pivot point in their evolution where they sort of feel like they need to branch out. They start doing so with a technology called rift technology. It's essentially kind of like a wormhole type thing. You create a rift in space and time and travel through it to instantaneously appear somewhere else. But it causes quantum disruptions, and you need a whole lot of power in order to do it. As the Shi start branching out using this rift technology, they start to realize that every species they encounter is inferior to them. They have pretty much gotten away from dying of old age or natural causes because they're so resilient. They communicate by telepathy. They use telekinesis. They levitate. They use all this advanced technology. They are superior. And they look down on all other cultures. They eventually wind up manipulating some to their own ends, including basically just playing games with them. There are accounts of Shi going to planets, acting as gods, and then leaving. And once they leave, trying to convince the people there, basically, as they're leaving, we will return if only you sacrifice yourself for us. And entire populations wind up essentially wiping themselves out, trying to bring the Shi back to them. I mean, think the Goa'uld in Stargate, yet even more despotic, even more evil than what we would have seen in, say, Stargate SG-1, or the Ori later in Stargate SG-1. Bad dudes who think of themselves as superior and therefore justified to saying everybody else is a lower life form. They don't matter. One of the places they wound up going to is a planet called Tangkao. And on that planet, they discover a race called the Quay, a very hardy, tribal, very monstrous-looking race from our perspective, who can survive in very harsh environments. They use the Quay as basically slaves. They come down as gods, convince them to work for them, again, kind of a Stargate-y type of thing going on, but spread them across the galaxy to do so, or at least across the planets with their rift technology that they've been able to get to across the universe, I suppose, including on Sayal itself. Eventually, though, when all the things that they want from Tangkao wind up running dry, they just leave the Quay behind and figure they're just going to die out without the Shi. Instead, the Quays survive. They become stronger, and they use abandoned Shi technology and augment it for themselves, becoming a small sort of rebel force to be reckoned with. They wind up finally going up against, in an uprising, they go up against the Shi, and the Shi feel a need to wipe them out. All of them, so to speak. The Shi develop a new type of weapon, like a quantum disruption style weapon. We're talking about a weapon that could, in theory, wipe out the Kuei entirely. But it's being built on a space station, and the Kuei rise up and manage to get a hold of the space station to get to the weapon and turn that weapon against the star in the Shi's home system. It's going to basically destroy the star, destroy the system, destroy the Shi, and presumably the Kuei right along with it. But it's a way to strike back against the Shi. Eventually, well, I guess I say eventually, within quick succession, because they don't have a whole lot of time, the Shi managed to tap into this star's energy and use it for one last-ditch effort to open up a rift again, this time bigger than anything they've ever tried, and pull their entire planet through it. Not just a ship, but the planet. They do so pulling along some Kuei ships that manage to get in there with them, and Kuei who are, of course, on the surface as well of Sayal, and pull that planet through the rift, through space and time. Presumably just through space, but we don't know. They don't specify the time, so we may be seeing a time shift here as well. Gets pulled through space and time and deposited where? In our solar system. That's right. Sayal becomes a new planet inside the solar system we think of as Earth's solar system. So you've got the Mavericks and Gonjin and Earth all going at it in our solar system. And now you have this new planet deposited right into the middle of it with the Shi and the Kuei going at each other, who will now start to go at us and vice versa as the storyline starts to develop. Around this time, unfortunately, we start to see things change for humans as well. I say unfortunately because the ramifications really haven't been determined yet. It could be a blessing, it could be a curse. Probably a little bit of both. You see, the rift, the Mumon Rift, as it's called, that allowed Sayal to get here, didn't close. And as it exists, it's spitting out these quantum particles that we really can't accommodate for. Earth's, we don't have shields against this kind of thing, We haven't really dealt with a huge rift in space before. And it starts, these particles start to permeate some human beings, just like it did the Kuei, just like it did the Shi very early on. It starts to affect humans. And there had always been stories about, faith healers, people who could heal with a touch, or people who might be able to see the future and stuff like that. But it had always been little quirky things. Was it real? Was it not? It's kind of hard to say. Then these quantum particles start changing us. And some humans start to develop unique powers, unique abilities, superhuman abilities known as Kizin. And the people who have those abilities become known as Kizin themselves. It's the name of the ability, and it's the name of the person who has the ability, Kizin. And it really does basically create what amounts to a brand new dynamic within humankind. We are no longer only human, as the old saying goes. And you have this crazy new situation with new dynamics amongst the human factions, plus, I'm grabbing a book here, new dynamics amongst the aliens and the way we're going to interact with each other. The new solar system winds up looking a little something like this. We have Gonjin, or Mars. We have Earth, of course, Mercury and Venus over here. The asteroid belt. But before you can reach Jupiter beyond that asteroid belt, there's the rift. And with the rift comes the fact that you have Sayal in our solar system, and you got to get past the rift, Sayal, to get to Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Last Chance Station, Pluto, and so on. And the adventures of wars take place in our own solar system, on moons of our own solar system, on planets in our own solar system, places that science talks about. One of the greatest parts of the way that the story of wars is told is it uses as much as possible real science, real locations. You are going to get to see a glimpse of what our future could actually be. Perhaps minus the alien races, but hey, maybe even them. You know what I'm saying? It's a very dynamic storyline, and the storyline picks up after the rift, after things have been really heating up on both sides with both of these conflicts, the alien conflict and the Earth conflict, or the human conflict, and they start to blend together. You get these events taking place in the world of wars. It is the end of the 24th century, and the solar system shudders with the drums of war, says the back of the first RPG book, and they're right. In 2391, control of the solar system, it's a new ball game, and any faction could win it, or be wiped out, as the case may be. Those 5 factions are what make wars such an interesting story.